Does every couple have a packet? And if you're here by yourself and your spouse isn't here or you're single, do you have a packet? So I want to make sure everybody's got a packet. If not, we're going to have to figure out something else. Well, I certainly appreciate the turnout for tonight. Mark and I talked about how many to expect, and so it turned out better than what I anticipated. So that's great. And it's certainly a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm Bill Behrman with Christian Financial Resources, and it's my pleasure to be able to be here tonight and to talk to you about something that I feel is very important for everyone. I don't think this is a seminar that's just simply for the young or the middle-aged or the older folks. I think this is something that has something in it for everyone. So I've given you quite a bit of information. You'll find that I'm a very laid-back, easygoing person. But we've got a ton of material to get through. And it's my desire to help you as much as possible navigate these waters of estate planning and what to do. I've been doing this now for about 15 years, and I've really concentrated on this over the past 3 years, and I really enjoy it. I've helped hundreds of people get their estate plans figured out and worked out and done, and they've been very appreciative because now they can kind of rest and know that they've got this in place. But I've given you a lot of information. The first sheet, or the one sheet that's there, is called Questions to Ponder. And you'll find that is a sheet that just gets you thinking about the questions that you need to ask yourself as you start thinking about planning your estate. And when I say planning the estate, don't think that I'm always talking about people that are $1 million people. I'm talking about people that have nothing, but they have kids and they need to get guardianships established and they need to do different things like that, okay? But it's your estate. It's what you're worth and who you want to see it go to and who you want to have manage it. So I've given you a sheet of questions to ponder. Some of these will apply to you, some won't. Some of you have minor children still at home, children under the age of 18. You still have them at home. You need to think about who's going to be their guardian if something happens to myself and my spouse. Am I going to sit back and be happy in heaven and know that the judge is going to appoint somebody to raise my kids? Or do I want to say that? Do I want to have that level of confidence in the person that I chose to raise my children? So that's very important for those of you that are young with minor kids at home. Those of you that are my age, that are around 60, a lot of life changes have taken place. Your kids have gone off, now you've got grandkids. You need to be thinking about other events in your life. Those of you that are senior adults, senior citizens, you need to be thinking about healthcare decisions. We all need to be thinking about healthcare decisions, but you particularly. And what's some of the steps that you need to go through to decide if something happens to me, who's going to make healthcare decisions for me? And what's going to be the process, and how can I make that as smooth as possible? And so these are some of the things that we're going to go through and talk about tonight. We've got a whole list of things to go through, and I want to get started by offering up a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for the rain, and thank you, Father, for the life that brings to your world. We pray, Father, for tonight that our hearts will be open, our minds will be clear, that we'll be able to understand the concepts that are presented, that we'll be able to think about legacy and what you want done in our lives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. We have a ministry partnership. You've had Darren Key over here many times to represent Christian Financial Resources, and that's who I work with. I work with Darren. And I put at each table different annual reports of Christian Financial Resources. We have special promotion items. Most of you know who it is that we are and what it is that we do. We're an extension fund of the Christian church. And so we're responsible a lot of times for helping churches to build, to finance new buildings, to finance the purchase of land, renovations, things like that. And so people within our churches invest their money with us and allow us to loan that money back to our own churches to be able to help them fund their projects. And many times we're able to offer a better interest rate for them, plus the biggest reason that I feel is important for working through CFR is our ability to work with the local church. We're church people, we know the church, and we know how important it is to help the church. And so we're able to do those kinds of things, as well as offer good quality investments for those that are interested. And we feel that we pay higher interest rates than what you can find in most banks or any type of lending institutions. And on top of that, you'll find that as a result of that, you're helping your brothers and sisters in Christ. And what better thing is there to do than that? And so that's who we are. A part of what we do is the estate planning, the will and trust aspect of things. And the reason why we do that is, yeah, we do in lending, we do investments, but this is something new that we've done now in the past several years to help our churches, to help our church members think about legacy. Legacy. We give our money to the church on a weekly basis. We bring our offering envelopes, we write our checks. But when it comes time to be thinking about leaving money after we pass, we tend to not think about ministry. And so I want to encourage you tonight to think about ministry. Think about what's going to be your legacy for the kingdom of God and how important that is. And so as we go through tonight, there'll be different times when I'll kind of drive that point home and I'll run that knife in your back. All right? Since you're sitting right here, you're going to be on. Okay? And he's got this umbrella. Look at this. This has got a point on it, too. And I'm going to drive that point home because I think it's so important to have you be reminded of that. So that's kind of the side about Christian Financial Resources. Now, Financial Planning Ministry is a ministry that was started back 35 years ago by a couple of attorneys out in Southern California that were members of the Christian church out there. And they realized that there wasn't much being done in our churches to help our church members do their wills or trusts or their legal documents. And so they decided that they would start doing this and use this as a ministry to help the local church and to help church members to prepare their documents. And they would do it at no cost to the individuals as long as they considered a gift to the ministry. A gift to ministry, either their church or other ministries. And so this started, and now, after 35 years, they've put together over 19,000 estate plans and have helped to generate almost $1 billion to go into ministry that otherwise would have gone to attorneys, to the court system, to other places that could care less about ministry. So tonight, everything I'm doing is talking about ministry and what we can do to help expand God's kingdom. And so that kind of leads into this discussion of things that you're going to learn tonight. And I get wound up and I get carried away. And so I tend to walk in front and I'll stand in front and block your view. If I do, just do that and I'll move out of your way. But I think everybody can hear me okay. You're going to have a fit because I'm going to be all over this place. But things that you're going to learn tonight. Number one, I want you to go away from here tonight realizing the fact that you're a steward rather than an owner of what you have. You're a steward of what God has entrusted to you. Instead of steward, you can use the term manager. You're the manager of what God has given you. Decisions that you need to make in order to leave a legacy. What's some of the documents that I'm going to need as I look at estate planning? Do I need more than a will or a trust? what's some of the other documents that I need to get? These documents, you'll find out how they're prepared and updated at no cost to you. And this is a gift from Christian Financial Resources because we're a sponsor of the Ministry of Financial Planning Ministry. So we're actually paying for this to be done for you and constantly updated for you as you go through life. Again, the only thing we ask is for you to consider a gift in your estate plan to the church here at Merritt Island, okay, and other ministries. The differences between a will and a living trust. Well, you know, I've heard about a will, and I've heard about that, but I don't know anything about a living trust. Is that something that I need? Well, we're going to talk about the two differences tonight, and maybe the reason why you might want to consider a living trust. And then and I'll tell more about this later, when we meet one-on-one, I can talk more specifically with you individually on whether a will do your job or you need to have a living trust. And we'll work through that later on. But I do ask that you just go ahead for right now, and if you have questions, just write the questions down on a piece of paper or something and ask me later, because we do have a lot of material to get through. And I don't want to get bogged down with questions. And it's easier because a lot of times questions are personal in nature, and I can answer them afterwards. And I'll stay here as late as you want tonight. Probate and how to avoid it. Is it something that I want to avoid? What is probate? That kind of has a scary ring to it, but what is it? How does a living trust work? Oh, what if I own property in 2 or more states? What if I live down here, but I still have property in Indiana? How's that going to impact my estate plan? What's that going to do? How do I distribute my personal items? Those things that mean something to me that maybe aren't worth anything to anybody else, but they're sentimental items. Some may be valuable items. Maybe you have your grandparents' wedding rings. Maybe you have your dad's shotgun collection. Maybe you have a coin collection, baseball card collection. Maybe you have a piece of furniture that was your great-grandmother's. Those types of things. How do you distribute those to the people that you want to have those? What's the best way to do it? And then finally, number 10, and a lot of people don't understand and realize this, and then it's document validity coming into Florida. A lot of people that I work with here in Florida say, well, I have a will in Indiana, but we moved down here 5 years ago. Do I need to update that? Yes, you do. If you've moved here from out of state and you have out of state documents, those documents must be updated for the state of Florida. That is in the Florida statutes, and that must be done. If you have a living trust outside of Florida, that may be good enough. And if you have a living trust that was created in Indiana or North Carolina, later on I'm going to ask you to bring that trust with you when you meet with me in about 3 weeks. And then I can go through that and see if that's going to work. Each state has its own set of guidelines as far as what it wants to see in its legal documents. So if you have a will that you put together 20 years ago, chances are that needs to be updated because life changes. Life doesn't go in a straight line. Does life go in a straight line for anybody? It goes like this, doesn't it? And that's what happens. So these are some of the things we're going to learn tonight. That we're going to start off by showing you that God owns it all. Now, I've given you a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, and feel free to make notes on it. You can write notes on it. I also gave you a copy of the planning guide from Financial Planning Ministry. We'll get to that in a little while, and we'll talk about that. And then also I gave you the Christian Financial Resources annual report that talks about what we do. So you kind of got it all there. And you also have a free pen. You know, I'm just full of free pens. So God owns it all. And that's not anything that I've said. That comes to us from Scripture. And so I've given you a lot of the Scriptures, and this is not an exhaustive list of this discussion, but I think you can see, and it's demonstrated to you, the fact that we're stewards, we're managers of what God has given us. When we understand that concept, it greatly enhances our legacy development as a family, as an individual. Because we realize, wait a minute, all this stuff that I have, it's come from God. Now, how can I best honor Him after I pass? And what can be my legacy? Now, the scriptures are full of people that we can talk about with legacy, and I can start in and start going down the list on those and keep you here until 2 o'clock in the morning, talking about different ones in Scripture, but I won't do that, because I trust you to look these scriptures up and realize and see. So, as you start thinking about your decisions that you need to make, and you start thinking about this wealth transfer process, let's start with this. What has God entrusted to me to manage? What legacy do I want to leave? Okay, who's going to be my intended beneficiaries? My spouse? Well, I hope so. Your children, your church, other ministries? When should the beneficiaries receive what I'm passing on? During my life? Am I capable of passing on some things while I still live? Or am I going to have those assets to live on and then pass them after I leave? At death or at both? How should the beneficiaries receive the property? Outright? Or maybe I have a child that has a tendency to be a spendthrift. And if you give him $10,000, that $10,000 will be gone tomorrow. So what's some things maybe that I want to think about doing to help him? It's not that I'm being mean to him. I'm helping him grow in the Christian faith. Because hopefully, the older he gets, the more he'll understand and learn about legacy. And then how much should the beneficiaries receive? As much as possible or a set amount? And then finally, once you complete this process, and if you want to work with me tonight and you want to work through financial planning ministry, God bless you, I'm here with you all the way, and I'm going to help you all the way. But maybe after tonight you want to take this to your local estate planning attorney. That's fine, that's great. You complete the planning guide and take that to him, and that will help hold down the cost that you're going to pay him to create those documents. Or you may decide to go out onto the internet and go to nolo.com or legalzoom.com or totallegal.com and do your documents on your own. You can do that too. Just do it. I just want to help you to get it done. If you choose to work with me, I'm going to help you all the way and be more than willing to help you. Financial planning ministry will help you by keeping your documents updated for as long as you live. But the one thing that you need to make sure that you do is when you complete this process and you have your healthcare documents, your will or your trust, and your powers of attorney, all that in place, sit down and talk to the people that's going to be in charge of managing your estate. And tell them what you expect. If I've seen it once, I've seen it tens, if not hundreds of times, where mom and dad did things in their will or trust that they didn't want to communicate to their adult children, and as a result, it created all kinds of problems in the estate down the road. And I don't want that to happen to you. Sit down and talk to your family members and let them know what you expect to have happen. Okay. How's this, you're able to do this for nothing? How are you able to do this? Well, sponsoring ministries like Christian Financial Resources pay for the document preparation. You know, our mission is funding ministry, changing lives. The only request that we ask that you do is to consider leaving something to Christian ministry, leaving something to your church, maybe CFR, maybe another financial planning ministry partner, or financial planning ministry themselves, or some other ministry. Now, How are you able to do that? Well, okay, if you go and you do these documents online, it's going to cost you $100 to a couple $100 to do your documents. If you go to an attorney to do a will and those healthcare documents, it's going to be probably $500 to $700. If you do a trust, it's going to be around $2,000 to $3,000. And then every time you update, because of life changes, that's going to also cost you. So I'm saying, consider, instead of going that route, consider using financial planning ministry and redirect those funds to ministry at the time of your passing. You with me? You understand? You ready to shoot me now? Now, I'm a pretty nice guy. You don't want to shoot me. I may stick him in the back. That's good. All right. So when it comes to documentation, what's my options? Well, you basically have three options when you look at planning your estate. One is what is called intestate succession. Now, that almost sounds like a disease, but it's not. Anybody know what intestate succession is? I kind of gave you the answer. It's not having a will. Now, I'm sure I'm not the only person that always thinks the sun's going to come up tomorrow. Right? The sun's going to come up tomorrow. What happened to a fella about 3 months ago? His letter of his name begins in a P, ends in an E. It's a 6-letter word. Prince. You think Prince thought that too? And there he died at the age of 57, and he died intestate without a will. Over $300 million is his estate. Has a half-sister, and now we're finding out that he's probably going to have a couple hundred other half-sisters now that are going to be related to him. Now, what do you think is going to happen to that $300 million in his estate, or the bulk of it? Who's going to get that? I don't want to see that happen to you. Now, is anybody here worth $300 million? If you are, we're going to go and have a steak dinner after church. I don't care if you have $5 to your name. It's still something that God has entrusted you with, and you're the manager of that, and He expects you to do a good job of managing. So, that's intestate succession, dying without a will. We don't want anybody to do that. Over 70% of our church members do not have a valid estate plan. So if you don't have an estate plan tonight, you and 7 out of 10 others are in the same boat. And I'm here to help you, and we're going to get this corrected over the next few months so that we get this done. The next one is a last will and testament. Now there's different, we've all heard about last will and testament. There's different forms of that. One is called a holographic will. You know what a holographic will is? That's a handwritten will. One that was handwritten out. In the state of Florida, and in 46 of the 50 states, a holographic will is no longer accepted as a valid will in the state of Florida. Well, here's the reason why. Those of you that are my age, around 60, maybe you have parents that were factory workers up north. And in my situation, my dad worked at the foundry in Indiana. And when he'd come home with his paycheck on Friday afternoon, he'd give his paycheck to Mom. And Mom would go to the bank. Well, who do you think signed his name on the back of that check? Mom did. And Mom could sign his name better than he could. But that became such a problem that the courts decided, look, we can't do this anymore. So it has to be, and in the state of Florida, it has to be a properly prepared document that is witnessed by 2 people and notarized by a 3rd person, so that we know that that person is who they are. The next is a witnessed will. Okay, I just talked to you about that. Different states have different requirements. Here we're going back to this idea that you got to have Florida documents, because when you look at other states, they don't have the requirements that Florida does. Florida requires 2 witnesses. They're witnessing to 2 things. One is the fact that you, who is the signer of the document, is who you claim to be. they either know you or they've seen your driver's license to know indeed that you are Mark Horn. You've seen his picture, you know that's him. Then secondly, you're attesting to the fact that Mark is of sound mind and he knows what he's doing.
Amen.
That's the one thing, that's the other thing that is being done by witnessing any documents. Those are the two things, and I'm not charging you for that, so that's just something you can learn and take with you that you'll always know. Another thing is an outdated will. Again, if you come in from another state, you need a Florida document. If you've not updated your will or trust in the past 5 years, you'll want to take a look at it, because generally life changes for us about every 3 to 5 years. Something happens in our lives, either a birth, a death, something happens in our lives that causes us to need to update our estate plan. And then finally, the third portion of that is called a trust. And we have a couple of different types. We have what is called an irrevocable trust. That's a charitable trust. And that, by the word irrevocable, it means it can't be changed. So if you decide that you want to create a trust for the church here, and you want to give the church a certain amount of money, and you give the church $50,000, you get the tax deduction. That's a trust that's been established. You can't change it because you've taken the tax deduction. You can't get it back. What we're talking about tonight is a revocable living trust. A revocable trust means that it can be changed, and it will be changed every 3 to 5 years or as life happens. So it's a changeable trust. Now, out of these three options, which plan do you think would likely be subject to probate? And what is probate? Well, probate administration is the process of paying a deceased person's debts and then transferring assets to his or her beneficiaries. A probate court judge oversees the process. Sounds fine, doesn't it? Sounds like a good idea. Sounds like it's orderly and organized. Now let's back up and let's decide which of these plans are going to be subject to probate. You think if we die without a will, that's going to go through probate? Yes. Yep. What about a will and testament? Will that go through probate? Yes, it does. It will go through probate. A revocable living trust will not. That will not go through probate. Now, why are we concerned about probate, and how big does our estate need to be for us to even have to go through probate in the state of Florida? Well, I've given you some different states and what their threshold is. And so if you have assets that total more than $75,000 here in Florida, you're going to go through probate. So if you have your house and you have your investments and bank accounts, and if it's over $75,000, then you're going to go through probate. These are the other levels in some of the other states. Ohio, it's 35. Kentucky, it's 15. North Carolina, it's 20. Indiana, it's 50. But guess where you don't want to live? Georgia. Because there you're going through probate whether you like it or not. Whether you have $5 to your name, you're going to go through probate. Well, all right. So why do we want to avoid it? Why is it something that we would want to avoid? Now, if your assets, if you rent a place and you live on Social Security and maybe you have $5,000 in to your name, then you're going to be under that threshold, and you're not going to go through probate, so you're not going to have an issue there. And for that situation, I'll help you, and we'll prepare a will for you to help you handle that, as well as your health care documents that are necessary. But why would we want to avoid probate? Because it's expensive. Anytime you get the courts and attorneys involved, are they going to do things for you for free? No. And typically, what they'll charge is a percentage of the estate. So if you have an estate that is valued at about $200,000. All your probate expenses, your court costs, your attorney fees, the other fees that are involved, the expenses are going to be involved. You could be upwards to $16,000. Given certain circumstances, it can be less than that. Given certain circumstances, it can be more than that. It just depends on the specific situation and the specific attorney and how easy it is to take your process through. But this is a good indicator for a nationwide level of about what it costs to go through that. $500,000, about 7%, $1 million, about 6%. So probate fees, expenses for settling your estate can be anywhere from $16,000 to $60,000. Could be less than that, it could be more than that. But the question that I have for you, coming back full circle to this idea of ministry, is there another way that I could use these funds? And could these funds be available to the church or other ministries? And so that's what I want you to consider as we work through this tonight. It's something that takes time. When you have to go through probate, attorneys and court system doesn't work fast. It can take anywhere from 6 months to 9 months to 2 years or more to settle an estate. And that is because you're at the mercy of the court system. Now, let's say you have a parent that passed away, and that parent left his house. And you're the adult child in charge of taking care of your father's estate. And let's say your father still has a mortgage on that estate. His money, everything is locked up because it's in probate. And you can't get access to his funds. But you still have property tax, you still have homeowner's insurance, you still have expenses that have to be paid in the upkeep and the maintenance of the house. So what are you going to do? You have to petition the court to get a summary judgment out of the judge to get access to some of those funds. That can take time. In the meantime, these bills still have to be paid. And it can take time to get this process done. It's something that takes time. The estate's frozen and you don't have control over it. So you have to petition the judge again to hurry it up. I need access to these funds so that I can pay my father's funeral costs. I can do to take care of things. And the assets are frozen. And here's what I think is the big issue about a will, is that it's a public document. In this day and age of privacy, this is a big deal, because what happens is a will is a public document. And so what happens is when you pass away and you have a will, your will is filed in the probate court. And probate is a public environment. So that will gets published. And anybody that wants to can go to the recorder's office and ask to see a copy of your will. You may say, well, that's no big deal. Why should I be concerned about that? Well, maybe you don't have to. Let me play out a scenario for you that happens every day. And it happens here in Brevard County. There are people that will watch the newspaper for obituaries. And they will decide, based on the address of the person that passed away, approximately how much they think that person might have been worth. Then they will, when that will becomes a public document and it's filed on the probate and it's in the recorder's office, they will go down and read that will. And they'll see that here this person has $300,000. And he's going to give it to his 2 children that live here in Brevard County. And here's their names. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to look up their address. And then I'm going to find their phone number. And then I'm going to give them a call because I just happen to have something that they would be interested in. I might be able to sell them some insurance or investments or anything like that. And by that document being public, there are unscrupulous people that do that. And they do it all the time. And that's a thing to be concerned about with a will. Now, what's some advantages of a revocable living trust? And we're going to talk about this now as we look at trusts and evaluate for you whether a will is right for you or maybe you want to consider a revocable living trust. So we'll go through this idea here over the next few minutes. An advantage of a revocable living trust is you avoid probate. If you own real estate in Florida, if you own your house and you've got a mortgage on it or whatever, but if you own real estate in Florida, you'll want to listen and consider a revocable living trust. Doesn't mean it'll be right for you. We won't know that until we sit down one-on-one. But you'll want to pay attention and think about it for your property and what you want done. It's less expensive for heirs. Here's what happens when you pass away. If you have a revocable living trust, let's say your adult child is what is called the successor trustee. He or she is the manager of your trust. When you pass, and once he or she receives your death certificate, then he or she can go down to the courthouse here in Brevard County and take a copy of the trust, take a copy of your warranty deed or quitclaim deed, whatever you have on your house, and go down there with your death certificate and move that property into their name immediately. Now, what's the advantage of that? The advantage of that is now your son or daughter has the ability to go ahead and contact a real estate agent and start getting ready to get that house put up on market to get it sold. Instead of it sitting waiting for a judge to decide when that can be done months down the road. All you need to have is that death certificate and a copy of the trust along with the warranty deed or quitclaim deed or whatever the deed is for the property. So that's a real advantage to be able to help the heirs. And you, as a result, eliminate a lot of the lengthy delays. Because now that you have the trust and now that you have the death certificate, you can go about moving things into your name, into the name of the trust, and getting them distributed to the heirs and having that all settled and that estate settled in a few months rather than over a period of upwards to a couple of years. And the big thing is you preserve privacy. You preserve the privacy of that document. It's completely flexible. The revocable living trust is something that's completely flexible. It can be changed or canceled at any time. You know, we talked about life. It doesn't go in a straight line. It's got its curves and twists and turns. Life changes. And as a result, you need to be able to make those changes. Your minor children become 18-year-old adult children. All right? There's a change that's going to have to take place because now they're responsible for making their own decisions. So there's changes that will need to be made in your documents. You avoid the problem of joint ownership. And you say, what, Bill, what on earth is that? All right, let me talk for just a second about this joint ownership idea and help you understand that a little bit better because that can be a real issue in an estate situation. Let's say you have a house that is worth $200,000 today that you bought back 20 years ago for $50,000. All right? If something you decide to do today, if you decide to sell that, you could have $150,000 capital gain. If you decide to go ahead and give that property now to one of your children, their basis in that property is the same as yours. It's going to be $50,000. Then when they sell it, they're going to have a capital gain of $150,000. When you pass away and you gift your property to your adult child gets the stepped up basis in the worth of the house. So that house was worth $200,000. It's worth $200,000 today. And you pass away. I just like working at boards. $200,000, and you paid $50,000. That gives $150,000 capital gain. But when you pass, your adult children get the stepped up basis in the asset of now $200,000. That is true as well for any investments that you might have at Merrill Lynch or Wells Fargo. They get the stepped up basis. If you paid $50,000 for that stock and it's now worth $200,000, the children at the time of your death flowing to them through a trust will get the stepped up basis. So from a tax standpoint, that can have a major impact on what you do. Now, for those of you that are younger, that have young children at home under the age of 18, by having your legal documents, a will or a trust, you're able to appoint who you want to have raise your children if something happens to you. If you don't have a will or trust and something happens to you and your spouse tonight, then the family that's left behind has to go to the court and have a judge make a decree on who's going to raise those kids. And maybe it's not the family member that you want. Maybe it is, but maybe it's not. But again, who do you want making that decision? Do you want the judge to make that, or do you want to make that decision? So that's why it's important. Those of you that that have minor children at home, something else that you want to look at is you may say, well, Bill, we don't have any assets. What are we going to do to take care of our kids and their education and stuff if something happens to us? Go out online and look at term life insurance. And you can find term life insurance that will cover that. And you get a couple $300,000 worth of term life insurance. If you're 30, 35 years old, you can get that for $30, $35 a month. Well, that's pretty cheap to take care of your kids if something happens. Maybe you've got an insurance agent here in the church that can help you get term life insurance. Whatever. You can go out online. You can go out to selectquote.com. They'll give you a gazillion different companies that will do that. But that's an option for you that have minor children at home. And by doing that, you avoid this whole stuff getting tied up into the court system. Also, you are able to prevent court control of assets due to incapacity. Something happens to you and you're in a coma and you're not able to make medical decisions. The person that is your manager, whoever is your successor trustee, can take over immediately in taking care of your affairs while you're incapacitated. Then when you're better, you can take it back over and take control. That's another big deal with the healthcare documents that you'll get, and it's called an Advanced Healthcare Directive. That includes a living will and also your healthcare power of attorney. That's all a part of it together. And that's important for all of us to have. Because we never know when we leave this building what's going to happen to us out here on any of the streets. So it helps us to prevent court control of assets due to incapacity. You can name your conservator. Who do you want making those healthcare decisions for you? Who do you want making those decisions? We talked about being able to make a quick distribution of assets. Used to be, we had a real issue with federal estate taxes, but not so much anymore. This can change from one year to the next. Now, we're looking at almost a $5.5 million exemption. So unless you have an estate worth over $5.5 million, you're safe from federal estate taxes. But it used to not be that way. And those of you that are maybe from the Midwest, that are maybe from the farm, understand this very significantly, because earlier, just so much as 15 years ago, that amount was $600,000. And you have a family farm up north that maybe has been in the farm for 100 years, maybe it's 500 acres, that maybe it was worth $2.5 million. You're only getting a $600,000 exemption. That means about $2 million gets taxed at 40%. Now you know and understand why it was always such a hassle for farm families up north. And how do I know this? Because I'm a farm family. I've dealt with this, and I know what it does. And how frustrating it is when your parents and grandparents worked all their lives, and you have to pay most of it. You have to sell off your family farm to pay taxes. But a lot of that's been corrected now. But it could go back. It could go back. So, I just bring that up. Something else that you want to find out about a revocable living trust is it's difficult to contest. It's hard to be contested in a court system versus no documents or versus having a will. So you'll find that it's very difficult to contest. So how does it work? It operates much like a bucket. There's a milk bucket. Anybody ever milked a cow before? Good. There's a few of them. What about this guy poking the back all the time? You ever milk a cow? All right. So anyway, that's a milk bucket. And think of the trust as being a milk bucket. What you want to do is put everything that you own into that milk bucket, such that then when something happens to you, your manager, your successor trustee, takes that bucket and turns it upside down and dumps it out and distributes it. So that's how it works. You create the trust, the Behrman Family Living Trust. That's the name of our trust. It's Behrman Family Living Trust. Cheryl and myself are the co-trustees. We're the owners. We're the managers of what God has given us. We've put it into a trust. We've named a successor trustee. That's our adult daughter. She lives in Gainesville. Our son lives in Indiana. It's easier to have our daughter that's here in Gainesville do this if something happens to us. So we've named her as the #1 trustee. He's the second selection. The same thing for making healthcare decisions for us. And then also you choose who's going to be the guardian for your minor children. You retitle the assets into the name of your living trust. So what you do with your house is everybody has, if you own real estate, you have a warranty deed or a quitclaim deed that was given to you or is on file at the recorder's office in you and your spouse's name or in your name. What you want to do is to take that document and make a copy of it, and we turn it in with the planning guide, and Financial Planning Ministry will prepare the document to move the warranty deed from your names individually into the name of the trust, with you being the owners, with you being the co-trustees. Then that places your document, your real estate, into the trust. In the document itself, it takes care of your homestead exemption, all that transfers over as well. All you're doing is changing the name from Bill and Cheryl Behrman as owners to the Behrman Family Living Trust, Bill and Cheryl Behrman as co-trustees. And that's the difference. Any investments, you have investments with Edward Jones or Merrill Lynch, you'll want to place those over into the name of the trust, and they'll help you do that. You can add the trust if you want. If you have life insurance, you can add the trust as the second beneficiary. Typically, you have your spouse as the primary beneficiary, and then you have somebody else or your adult children as the contingent beneficiaries. You can place the trust as your contingent. Then again, see, you're putting that in the trust bucket to all be distributed and gone out by the trust.
What about bank accounts?
Bank accounts the same way. That can go into the trust, then when something happens, it can be distributed. Now, we'll talk about that individually, one-on-one, when we see, because there are such things as a transfer on death designation that you can use with a bank account, with your investments at CFR. You can do a transfer on death, that when something happens to you, that will automatically go to the person that you name. And you can do that as well. And we'll look at that as that pertains to your specific situation. Here's a couple of books that I can recommend to you as we get ready to start wrapping things up. Living Trusts for Everyone. You can find these books on Amazon. They're like $3 or $4 a piece. Really helps kind of give you an education about this. Another one is called Splitting Hairs. Giving your money and things to your children without ruining their lives. Oh, wow. If you've got issues at home with adult children, maybe this is a book for you. And it's a powerful book, I'll tell you, it makes you think. Okay, so what's going to be prepared for you? Again, I said, you have the option that you can work with me and through Financial Planning Ministry. I'll meet with you, and I'm going to come back on Tuesday night, Tuesday day and evening on October 11th. And I'll show you how to sign up for that in a little bit. But Tuesday, October 11th, I'll be back here to meet in 45-minute appointments with you throughout the day. And I'll spill over into the evening as well, because we've had such a good turnout. If you decide to sign up, if we have to add times, I'll do that. I'll be more than happy to do that. But that'll be on October 11th. If you can't make it that date, then let me know or email me. You got my card at the table. You can email me, and I can set up a special time and come over here and meet with you and probably a couple others as well. So I'll do whatever it takes for you to get this done, okay? Now, if you decide that you want to work with me and go through this route, there's a sign-up sheet on each table. And those of you in the back, there's not a sign-up sheet. My lovely assistant over here, you want to take those and give those to each table? If you want to work with me, then you can sign up, and then I'll be in contact with you, and Financial Planning Ministry will be in contact with you. If you don't, and you want to work through your own means, that is absolutely fine. I don't want to waste your time with getting a myriad of emails from me, because I will keep after you to get this done, because I think it's that important. And just like I'm going to use this umbrella on him, I want to make sure that you get this done and get this completed. Did I not give you enough?
Okay,
so the option is yours, okay? But what you're going to get from us is a will or a living trust, whichever works best for you. You will also get an advanced health care directive, which is your living will. What that advanced health care directive does is that says what you want to have happen at the end of life. Do you want to be put on a feeding tube, feeding machine or not? Those kinds of decisions, all right? Also, part of that will be the healthcare power of attorney. Who do you want making healthcare decisions for you if you're not able to do that? The financial power of attorney, if necessary. We'll prepare that for you as well. If you're doing a living trust, you'll get what is called a pour-over will, and this pour-over will is a document that is prepared and does exactly what it says. It pours into the trust bucket what you didn't get placed in there. But that pour-over will still go through probate. So don't think you can get lazy and not follow through with funding your trust, then you'll just let the pour-over will do it. Because then you're going to defeat the purpose of doing a trust to begin with, because that's going to go through probate. And then you'll get a memorandum of trust along with that. So again, you can work with us, you can work with an attorney, you can work online, whatever you want done, you can do that. Our only request is if you work with us, you'll see in your planning guide. Can I borrow the planning guide? You see this booklet, everybody's got one. What you'll do is complete the booklet over the next 3 weeks. And you just fill out the information, fill out your contact information, children of your marriage or marriages, you fill that out. Then over in section number 4 is where you'll name who's going to serve as your manager, your successor trustee, or your personal representative if you're doing a will. Some of you may have heard of the word executive. In Florida, it's called a personal representative. But you can fill that out on who you want to serve in that role. Then next is who you want making healthcare decisions for you in step 5. That's there to help you make those healthcare decisions. Then in 6, if you have minor children, who is it that you want to serve as the guardian? And please talk to them first. Tell them a good idea. Don't just say, oh, guess what? Don't do that to them. But have the discussion with them on what you want done. And then step 7 is an overview of your estate. And that will help you to realize and see where you are in relationship to that $75,000 threshold for probate in the state of Florida. And so that gives you an idea of about what you're worth. You can guesstimate, if you have $350 in your, $357.23 in your checking account, just put $400 down, all right? If you think your house is worth $149,000, put $150,000. You with me? Make it easy. Make the math easy. Okay, then step 8, remember I talked about Christian Financial Resources being one of several sponsors of financial planning ministry? Well, step 8 lists all of those different sponsors that sponsor the work of financial planning ministry. So we pay a monthly fee to have these documents prepared for you. So you'll see in here Johnson University, Florida. You'll see Lake Aurora Christian Service Camp. They're in here. You'll see other ministries that maybe you support as a church or you individually that maybe you want to consider an estate gift to one of them. So the next couple of pages or so is that. And then on page 11, in the middle is a section for your church. And I want to encourage you to consider a ministry gift to the church. Let's go back to this idea of saving on probate fees and saving on attorney documents and everything that it costs. Consider some of those funds coming here to Merritt Island Church and helping build legacy here in Merritt Island. That's where you will put the church. You'll put that in there. If you don't want to do any of these other sponsoring organizations and you've got a ministry of your own that you want to support, as long as it's a Christian ministry, then you can write it in and we'll honor that request. If you are so led and you want to, and you're not familiar with any of these other ministries, and you want to leave money to the church, but you also recognize the ministry of financial planning ministry, then down at the bottom of page 11, you can put in something for them as well. Because they're the ones that are doing all this and preparing these documents. And then on page 12 is where you list all your family and who you want to receive your estate. And you can put in percentages. If you have 4 kids, maybe you want to put them in 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. and you listen. That's pretty much self-explanatory. Up at the top of page 13 is an important section, because what that is it's a final beneficiary. And I get this asked a lot, well, what's that? And why is that important? You fill that out in case something happens to your whole family that no one here is able to inherit anything that you're leaving behind. It's in case your whole family is wiped out in some kind of a strange zombie apocalypse.
If you have underage children, do you know what the guardian that you choose for your beneficiary?
Oh, that's a good question. And I'm getting to that.
Okay.
I'm getting to that. Give me a second here. But the final beneficiary is where you put down someone or something to get everything if something happens to you and everybody else that was going to inherit. Typically, people will put their church in there. The chances of it happening is very, very small, but it could happen. You know, if we have the zombie apocalypse, that could happen, folks. You never know. Bear with me, it's been a long day. You may put a distant relative there, okay? You can put family there, distant family there. You can put as many people as you want there if you want. But that's where you put that. Now, let's go back to your question about minor children. Minor children in the state of Florida cannot inherit property. They can't inherit money, they can't inherit property. So what you have to do is, on page 13 in the middle, at the time of your passing, a children's trust is created. And that's self-explanatory, and it talks about ways that you can word that. And this gives you an example of how to word that. What we did with our kids when they were minor children was we set it up that if something happened to myself and Cheryl, basically our estate consisted of term life insurance, that when both of our kids would get 50% of each. But what would happen is when our adult daughter, when she turned an adult, when she turned 18, we released 25% of the principal to her to pay for college. Now, while she's a minor child, they're drawing on that to use as needed. You're going to name a trustee as well. But this is when they get to be an adult and they start getting the money. Okay, you with me? Then at 21, we gave them another 25%, thinking, okay, they'll be close to being done with their undergrad. Now it's time for their grad school. We're going to pay for that. Then we released the remaining 50% when they were 25, thinking that they're done with school, now it's time to buy a house, here's the money for the house. So we've set them up at different stages. Now, they ended up, because we know our kids, and we know they weren't spendthrifts, and they wouldn't go through it, we could do that. But you can set it up however you want. That's only one example. If you've got an adult child that's 35 that can't handle money, and if you dropped $50,000 in his lap, it would be gone, or up his nose, or whatever, you can build that trust right here and create a trust stating that you want to give him, you want that, the corpus, the principle of that to be invested, and you're going to name Mark Bourne as the trustee to release the interest earned off of that to that adult child for the next 10 years. Then after 10 years, that trust can be released to the child based on Mark's decision as to whether or not he's capable of handling the money. You see, that's an example of how you can do that. I'm not saying do that. I don't know if I trust Mark or not. But that's how that would be done. You with me? You understand? Okay. And then that's where you would name the trustee. So did I answer your question on that? I went in more than what you wanted. And then back on page 14 is where you sign. Now, let me get things wrapped up here. Whoops. Did my battery die? No. All right, then use your... Thank you. All right. That's what happens when you don't plug it in. I didn't plug it in. Okay, now, we've gone through that. I've got some quick questions. I think that was my last slide, yeah. That we can go through. And the next one was that I just asked that you consider, again, in your documents, leaving something for ministry. Our dream at CFR is a 10% tithe portion. That you take 10% of your estate and distribute that between the church and any other ministries that you want to support. That's our dream. Doesn't mean you have to do it, but that's our dream, okay? Commonly asked questions. Is a living trust a new idea? No, it's not. It's been around for years. Does the transfer process of my property into the trust affect my property taxes? No, it doesn't. You still got to pay property tax. I can't get you out of it. May I include the distribution of personal items in my trust? Yes, you will. If you work with us, when you get your trust document back, there will be a Schedule C. And that Schedule C is where you'll sit down some morning with a cup of coffee with your spouse, and you'll write down those things that are mementos that mean something to you, that you want a specific person to have. May I include the distribution of, oh, I did that. Is it necessary for financial planning ministry to know the total value of my estate? No, it's not. It's there for your help, for your guidance. Can you make changes to your living trust after it's notarized? Yes, you may. That's why it's called revocable. It can be changed. Does a living trust make sense for a single person? Even more so does it make sense for a single person, and it's a big deal. Is a living trust practical for smaller estates? Yes, it is. And you've seen that up till that threshold around $75,000. Does a living trust avoid probate on out-of-state property? This is an important question. Yes, it does. If you die with a will or intestate and you own property in Georgia and also here in Florida, you're going to have probate in 2 states. That means 2 judges, 2 sets of attorneys. The other day I did a seminar for Todd Schwingel down in Sebring. Gentleman down there had property in 4 states. Guess what he's working on right now? Because he found out he's got probate in 4 different states. And that's going to mount up to the handle. So if I want to establish my estate plan, what is the next step? Again, if you want to work with me, fill out the sheet on your table there, and I'll get an appointment with you. If you've got this PowerPoint in front of you, yes, sir?
Do we need to fill this book out prior to our appointment with you? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Complete the planning guide. If you have questions, give me a call, and I can go over them on the phone with you, and we can work through it on the phone. There's 45 minutes isn't a whole lot of time to meet with you one-on-one when I've got to sit there and fill out a book. So that's why come prepared, and it just helps the others. I do a real good job of staying on time. When I say 45 minutes and your appointment's at 11:15, your appointment's at 11:15. And I really try to stay with that. Now, if you've got the PowerPoint presentation in front of you, you'll see a series of slides that is from the Financial Planning Ministry website. See the one on page 5 in the middle that says fpm.org? That's the website you'll go to. When you go to the website, because you're going to sign up for an appointment to meet with me on the 11th, and this is how you do that. You'll go to, up in the right-hand corner, that circled area there, that says appointments. It's hard to read, but you'll click on appointments. Then the next slide you'll get is the map of the United States. And this is a test of your geography skills, because you click on the state that you're a resident of. What state are we in? Florida. So you click on Florida. Now pay attention to where that arrow goes. Click on Florida. When you click on Florida, then you'll get a screen that will say event code. And you'll enter in that event code Island 16. And notice that's given to you on each of those 3 slides. Island 16 is what you'll put in there. Then it'll pop up all the different times. Starting, I think I start at 11 o'clock, and I think I finish at 7:30 on that Tuesday night. And I can go later than that, or I can come over earlier than that if necessary, okay? You'll just see how it goes, how it fills up. As it fills up, different times will say unavailable. So you're not coming at that time, somebody already beat you to it. But if you find the time that you want, click on that time, and then put in your personal information, and then Financial Planning Ministry and I as well will contact you and get that set up. So, is that clear as mud on getting signed up? Yeah. Good. We've gone through a ton of information tonight. And I realize that, I realize and understand that maybe a lot of this is still spinning. Go out to the Financial Planning Ministry website. They've got a great frequently asked questions section there for you that will be of great help to you. Feel free to give me a call. Go back through the PowerPoint. Go online and do some research on creating this. Just get it done. Whether you choose to use me or you use someone else, I just want to see you get it done. And if you do choose to use a local attorney or online, consider a gift to the church. At least consider God's ministry. Because again, what are you? You're not owners, but you're students. And that's the reason. And that's why I'm here tonight. And I thank you all for coming. I've tried to make this as enjoyable as possible. I've tried not to pick on too many people, right? If you have any questions for me, feel free to come up and ask me, or feel free to email me or contact me. You've got my business card. You've also got my card in the CFR folder. Let me have a word of prayer and we'll close out. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you all so much. Heavenly Father, wow, we've been through a ton of information tonight. And maybe everyone is just beginning to grasp the concept of being stewards, being managers of what you've entrusted to us. We pray, Father, that tonight we'll begin praying about that. We'll begin evaluating our life choices and what's going to be our legacy for our future generations. Father, you've given us so many examples of legacy throughout Scripture, throughout history. Father, we pray that we can be a legacy to future generations to help them learn of the saving grace of your wonderful Son, Jesus Christ. Father, I thank you for everyone that's here tonight. I pray, Father, that you'll give them wisdom, you'll give them discernment, you'll give them guidance as they make decisions over the next few weeks. And all these things we ask your blessing upon them. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you all.